much. Hello, everyone. I'm Sher Anne from Big Brothers Big Sisters of Toronto. And I'm going to talk to you about why mentorship matters, giving you an insight into the power of mentorship. Thank you. There you go. Let's start with an exercise. I want you all to think of someone or some people who showed you that you mattered. Someone who pushed you to keep getting better. Someone who helped you achieve your goals. Someone who gave you a say. And someone who broadened your world. Just take a minute to think about someone, maybe in your childhood, now, somewhere in between. There could be a person or many people. Just send love their way. Unfortunately, not everyone grows up having a positive, caring adult in their lives. We found that 1 in 3 people grow up without a mentor during their childhood. That's where our work comes in. And we're now also focusing on children. Children across Toronto, where 20% of 385,000 children and youth are living in poverty. The UN has described some manifestations of poverty, which include malnutrition, limited access to education and services, social discrimination, exclusion, lack of participation in decision-making. What does this lead to? Adverse childhood experiences. I'm sure you've heard of it, but I'm going to play a short video by the California Surgeon General just to dig a little bit deeper. Here we go.
Adverse childhood experiences, called ACEs, are stressful or traumatic experiences that occur in childhood, like violence, abuse, and growing up in a family with substance use or mental health problems. When a caring adult or supportive environment doesn't soften those adverse experiences, or when they are ongoing or overwhelming, they can lead to a prolonged activation of our stress response, called toxic stress. Think of toxic stress like this. Our bodies were designed to escape predators quickly. Imagine you're walking through the woods and you see a bear. Your brain signals your body to release stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart begins to pound, and your body prepares you to either fight or run from the bear. And that's useful if you're in the forest and there's a bear. The problem is when children face threats to their physical and emotional safety, and this system is activated over and over and over again. What was meant to protect you begins to do the opposite and becomes damaging to your health, creating long-lasting wear on your body and brain. Children are especially vulnerable to the effects of ACEs and toxic stress because their brains and bodies are still developing. The toxic stress from ACEs and other adversities such as poverty, racism, discrimination, and natural disasters can disrupt the normal functioning of vital bodily systems. Simply put, toxic stress can result in long-term mental and physical health conditions. Not only that, but the effects of ACEs can be passed from parent to child for generations through the biological changes and behaviors associated with ACEs and toxic stress. A person with 4 or more ACEs is twice as likely to suffer from heart disease, cancer, and stroke, 4 times as likely to develop depression, and 12 times as likely to attempt suicide. The good news is that safe, stable relationships and environments and other interventions such as physical and mental health support can reduce the risk of ACEs leading to toxic stress and stress-related health conditions. To learn more,
as we saw in the video, safe, stable, consistent, nurturing relationships that we build for our mentees through mentorship is what helps them develop their socio-emotional skills, building up their resilience, helping them reach their full potential and successfully thrive. How do we do this? We serve children and youth, as I mentioned, who face these adverse childhood experiences across this city. What do? We build intentional developmental relationships. So we match a child with a screened, trained, and well-assessed mentor who intentionally drives the elements of a developmental relationship within that mentorship. These elements include providing support, expressing care, sharing power, expanding possibilities, and challenging growth for the mentee. What happens? We continue with effective match monitoring to ensure safety and measure impact every 12 months. And what do we achieve? Children with increased developmental assets and skills which will help them succeed in life and thrive as adults. Our youth who graduate out of the programs are more likely to succeed in school, maintain good mental and physical health, overcome adversity, exhibit leadership, value diversity, help others, and delay gratification. And those are some of the indicators I've thrown in there that actually reflect positive change. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada also conducted a study that compared mentored versus non-mentored youth. And we found that the rate of depression, anxiety, alcohol consumption, and cigarette smoking were lower as compared to their non-mentored counterparts. So this is what we've seen and studied. And lastly, I'd like to leave you with a few takeaways. Relational wounds need relational healing. Through relationships with children and youth, we're able to shape them, cultivate abilities for them to shape their lives, learn how to engage, and help them to contribute to the world around them. Mentorship is a preventative solution that will help break the cycle of generational adversity. And lastly, mentoring is a cornerstone of a healthy society. I'm sure most of you here have experienced a great mentor. Anyone and everyone needs a mentor, and I'd like to say that mentoring is definitely an essential service for all Canadians. Thank you.
So welcome to Human Connection in the Workplace, a need for inclusion. I'm Sher Anne Butler, and I'm the founder of Accessible Creates, where we provide training and consulting solutions within the HR and diversity, equity, and inclusion scope, with a niche focus on how to support people with disabilities in the workplace. So before we get started, I want you to ask yourself these questions. First of all, we all work, or most of us work. You know, we need a livelihood and to make a livelihood. And so I want you to ask yourself these questions. Do you like what you do for work? Do you like your coworkers? Does your manager care about you? Do I need any accommodations to get my work done? Have I had any changes to my career path in my life? Have I started in one career and ended up in another? You know, what does my career look like? And last but not least, is my work environment inclusive for people like me? So as you know, we just came through a pandemic. We're kind of still in it. Some people are wearing masks. You know, COVID is still happening. People are getting tested with COVID. We had someone miss the presentation today because they're diagnosed with COVID. But, you know, looking at the work environment, you know, previously in 2020, we started working from home and working remotely. We can work anywhere in the world, you know, and this allowed for actually more inclusivity and diversity in our workplaces and allowed for, you know, people with disabilities. We're actually at a record high of being actually in the workplace because they can now work from home and have an accessible environment where they can actually do their work. You know, and then on the flip side, on the other picture, looking at, you know, back in the office, the traditional way of work, and understanding that right now, in our current climate, we're kind of in a sweet spot because some companies are going fully remote, some companies are going back on site. And what does that look like? And how do you ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion in both of these environments and foster that human connection? So I have some stats. So employees who feel connected at work are more likely to be satisfied in their jobs versus employees who feel disconnected. And so I think that's a huge statistic to say that, you know, when the people are feeling connected, they're more likely to feel satisfied in the positions and feel connected at work, and, you know, allows them to feel like they're contributing to a bigger issue. And so the top 3 reasons respondents feel disconnected include personality/work style differences that hamper ethnicity. So understanding that we all are different, but that we all have the same common purpose and why we're in the workplace and have a common goal that we're trying to accomplish. A lack of support/investment from managers. Managers are a huge reason why people feel disconnected at work, and they don't understand the role they play in human connection. And managers are supposed to check on you and make sure you're doing okay, and make sure you're being doing well in your job, and making sure that you feel comfortable with your job and your work environment. However, this is not the case, so a lot of people actually leave jobs because of poor managers. And also a lack of transparency. And so what this means is understanding that managers aren't transparent with their employees, coworkers aren't transparent amongst each other, people aren't letting people know when they're struggling with their day-to-day job tasks or what's going on in their personal life. 96% of employees believe that showing empathy is an important part in advancing employee retention. And empathy is a massive part of human connection. Empathy is how we relate to each other. We understand our struggles and our successes and our wins. And so to have 96% of employees recognize that as a huge reason why they're retained in these workplaces is massive. And last but not least, employees who feel their voice is heard are 4.6 times more likely to feel empowered to perform their best at work. We all want to do our best at work. We all want to bring our 100%, into the workplace. And especially based on the questions I asked, do you feel connected to your work? Do you feel like you have a purpose in your work? And so when you feel like your voice is heard, and you feel like you can voice your concerns, you can voice how you feel that the company is doing, addressing your needs, are they not addressing your needs, and really getting the conversation going, especially for diverse employees, such as people with disabilities, racialized employees, understanding that when their voice is heard, they're more likely to feel connected and perform better at work. So, what are the benefits of human connection at work? Well, a lot of you have already talked about the benefits of human connection in other areas, but what are the actual benefits of human connection at work? So first of all, emotional and mental well-being of employees. And I think right now we're in a very interesting spot because companies and employers are now recognizing the importance of mental health and mental health's impact on, how you show up to work. And, we just talked about grief, which is a huge part of emotional and mental well-being. This also leads to higher performance levels. And so with that as well, looking at, why are people performing well in certain aspects? Why are they not performing well? Why is there, kind of talking about the grief for a second, how, when an anniversary of something traumatic came up or, death in your family or things like that, for example, okay, you're sad about it again, or, it's impacting you and how you show up to the workplace. And so really addressing that. Also, higher levels of job satisfaction and reducing turnover. That, again, that when you have the reducing turnover, it allows for that more human connection because you get to know more of your employees. When people are leaving constantly, you get to know Joe one day and then he's gone the next, and you only connected with him for a short amount of time. And last but not least, which is the area I mostly focus on, is increasing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And this increases innovation and creativity. So some tips and tricks. So some tips, make it a priority. So really understand the importance of human connection and how, you want to, what kind of culture do you want your company to have? Make sure that you dedicate time, once a day or once a week, have a decided upon basis of when you're going to actually focus on the human connection, make sure it's priority in your organization, having structured activities, going to a conference with the entire organization, having meetings, having regular check-ins, having little fun activities that you can do, having, people like to be alone during lunch, but if you want to help foster that human connection in the workplace, having have lunch for half an hour and then go do a social activity altogether, or, having a work social. What does that look like? What does your company want from you? And establish the expectations and the norms. So what is the normal for your organization? It's not going to be the same for all organizations. We all have different cultures, the hustle and bustle. What does it look like? It could even look different between the departments because different departments have different priorities and things like that. But really understanding, okay, what can we do to better foster that? And come up with the creative ways. Again, have a games night, have a trivia night. What does that look like in your organization? And reward human connection. Especially when you're just starting off, people are like, oh, I'm just gonna go to work and go home. I'm just gonna get my paycheck and go home. But really rewarding the human connection, understanding, okay, gift cards, that is incentivization. What rewards do your employees want from you to actually reward the human connection and, start getting and fostering that culture in that environment. Organizing lunch and learn. So I actually usually host lunch and learn for companies that ask me to come in and I speak about a topic or, have little fun activities for them to do. And to really organize these lunch and learns and really picking topics that are relevant to what your employees want to learn. I think a lot of times companies, they host lunch and learns and the employees are like, well, we didn't want this, and so really understanding, okay, what are the gaps in your organization and what do they actually want to learn? What would they be willing to give up their lunch or, and dedicate their time to learning? And collaborate on various departments. So collaborating with HR, with finance, and, and with this too as well, a lot of times we all know we're working with a company, but we don't understand the bigger part we play in actually serving this organization. You're just like, okay, I'm HR, I do payroll, I do recruitment, accounting does the books. But what, really understanding, okay, what is the bigger picture of what you're doing as a whole organization? And so some tricks include having a team wellness sessions. I know yoga's been thrown around a lot, but like doing yoga or doing meditation together. It could also be, brain teasers or the trivia, like I mentioned previously. I think a lot of times wellness is looked at just as a physical wellness, and it's super important in the workplace. But also emotional and physical well-being is important. So what does that look like? Having check-ins with your employees, having, just having a time to talk. You just talk about your day, talk about your week, talk about, oh, how do you feel about the project you're working on? Do you need any assistance? Stuff like that. Have a formal or informal survey. So what I mean by that is, actually asking questions from your employees and understanding, okay, how do they currently feel about the culture? Do they feel engaged? Do they feel like they can bring the whole selves to work? Is there any gaps in that area? Or if the manager or the coworker, just have a conversation. Hey, what did you think of yesterday's meeting? Did you, and having that, breaking that communication and effective communication. And this is huge for, again, people with disabilities or other diverse employees in the workplace, because we all communicate differently. Some people communicate more with their hands, they communicate, or if you're in a work environment, and for example, if someone has ADHD, understanding that, if someone verbally says instructions to you, it might not process fully, but instead of having an email, be like, okay, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, or, send a Slack message, or, having that conversation with them, and best communicating how people need you to communicate with them, and not assuming that you know how to communicate with them. And also understanding the culture of your company. Are you very inclusive? Are you trying initiatives? Are you trying things out? Are you trying to make sure that you're including as much people as possible? Or, do you have gaps in this area? And last but not least, does every employee have the tools to connect with others? Like I mentioned, right now we're in a very interesting spot because some employees are on-site and some employees are remote. Do remote employees and on-site employees have the same access and the same tools to be able to reach each other and communicate with each other effectively and have these conversations? So I'm going to end on this slide. So I really like this picture because, like I mentioned previously about effective communication, again, diverse employees, diverse people, we all communicate differently. And when you assume that you know how to communicate with someone, based on how you communicate, that might not be sufficient for them. They might need more. And so really understanding that listening is a huge part of communication. Just don't talk at people, really listen to what they have to say and implement, kind of like May mentioned, when it's like, okay, well, how can I best support you? Really listening and having that listening piece. Nonverbal communication, that includes body language, posture, gestures, eye movement, how does that convey a message, and really understanding Canada's very diverse, and I'm so thankful for that. And so it's like, especially with immigrants, I think Victoria mentioned earlier, but thinking about, okay, the way I'm communicating with my body, am I presenting the message I want to be presented to this individual? Asking them, is it, if you see them flinch, or like when you see that you're doing something, and you see their body language, are they flinching? What does that mean? What does that look like? And then being clear, so choosing the right words. I think sometimes, especially in corporate, there's those big corporate words that are used, thrown around, all the acronyms, but being very clear about what you want and what you're expecting from your fellow employee or for your coworker. Being concise and being confident. So being, very clear and to the point, and also being confident in your approach. Human connection, it can be scary, but being confident in what you're asking with the person and what you want to get from the person. And being personable, recognizing your tone, sometimes taking a breather, so for example, you're working on a stressful project and then you go to talk to someone else, but you're so stressed, you have a tone in your voice, but you don't recognize that. But really understanding that, oh, was I a little harsh? Or, asking them, was I clear enough? Did you understand what I'm asking of you? And checking in is a huge aspect of communication, because you can assume that someone knew what you said, but unless you ask, you won't know. And last but not least, be patient. So be patient with the individual communicating with, be patient with yourself when you're communicating, and just, understand that communication plays a huge part in human connection in the workplace. Thank you.
First of all, thanks, Pete, for allowing me to be here today, and my co-panelists. Great work that you're doing. It's great to hear about those things. My name is Franco Taverna. I'm a professor at the University of Toronto, but also a co-founder of an organization called Companion Link, a registered Canadian charity that works to reduce isolation and loneliness in seniors by creating a friendship. It's a befriending intervention, usually with university student volunteers. Companion calls are our main activity, and these are phone or video calls between the volunteers and the senior to foster the friendship. The idea for companion calls came from the pandemic, but the idea of intergenerational friendships has a long history in my life. For 15 years, I've taught a course on Alzheimer's disease and dementia, where my students were tasked with becoming friendly visitors at local long-term care facilities as an important learning outcome of the course. The pandemic tragically interrupted that friendship in 2020, and it was the students themselves who mobilized a few weeks later to restore their connection with their senior companions, and that was largely done virtually, phone calls, and as any way they could. And that was the inspiration for Companion Link. They created a student group, and we were inspired to create this incorporated charity to develop this idea. Our goal is to connect every at-risk senior in Canada with a meaningful friendship. So we kind of adopted a lofty goal that we wanted to see how we could scale, how we could reach thousands and thousands, and that's been quite a journey. I'm not going to go into the effects of loneliness and isolation. We've heard it much better over the last couple of days. Rather, I just want to add my voice. What we've learned and what our research absolutely corroborates that it's very corrosive to health and even kills. And on the converse side, a meaningful connection with someone who cares can improve quality of life and decrease disability, lower mortality, risk for socially vulnerable older adults. So we've managed to match many dozen seniors and volunteers over the past couple years, and we've undertaken research. It's part of one of our values, one of our pillars for the organization. And so far, our preliminary research tells us that it's working with respect to loneliness. Our seniors report feeling less lonely. We have plans for bigger research. We want to measure the health impact longitudinally in the seniors, health indicators, healthcare use, and we're embarking on that goal with our research and institutional partners. But not surprisingly, we've seen some interesting impacts in our youth as well. In the sort of true theme of this conference, one of the themes of this conference, we know that a friend is beneficial to all. So when what started as a part of a learning outcome for students, we know the students are learning from this experience. They value the experience, and I just want to get these numbers right. 64% of our volunteers so far have felt that the companion calls has helped to reduce their own loneliness, which is interesting, and what I've learned from some of the people in this conference that that particular age group is quite lonely. So interesting that we're seeing those numbers. The calls make them happy, calmer and refreshed. For our young volunteers, a new and unique intergenerational friendship outside of the family can provide a meaningful mentorship, a unique opportunity to share wisdom, to share knowledge, and to develop aging literacy and become an aging advocacy. So just to share our vision and some of our pillars of what we're trying to build here. We're still fledgling. We hope to grow this into something that is Canada-wide and scalable. We have started with some very, very beneficial partnerships with service care providers that recruit, even on intake, on their own intake, recruit, assess their clients, senior clients, and identify the ones that could benefit from this particular program and bring them to us to match with a well-trained volunteer. Most of our volunteers to date have come from universities, the University of Toronto, although we have now just launched a chapter at Queen's University, and we have since, with the students who originally inspired this idea, now incorporated their own organization who will be the overarching organization for the student chapters, to recruit volunteers and to not only help them get involved with the program, but perhaps to build other opportunities for even in-person engagements with local seniors. To do this, to scale, we are building and prototyping a platform that overcomes one of the headaches in volunteering. Intake, screening, and training all built in, and that's a key part of our scaling goals. And we have adopted the value of nothing without us. We have Seniors Advisory Committee, and we work with seniors. We now are accumulating a growing number of seniors who are the volunteer end of the pair, and they are part of our innovation, creativity, and programming efforts. We want to create programming within the companion call that is deliberate and intentional with certain outcomes, perhaps customized for certain seniors or certain demographic groups. So we're very intentional with that, and then the associated training that comes along with that for the volunteers themselves. So that's the Seniors Program Committee. And what we're building is applicable to any social connection, which is quite interesting to us. And indeed, through my other efforts in my heart, we are now launching or going to launch through partnership with Down Syndrome Association of Toronto, a social connection program between students and adults with intellectual disabilities. So I want to end with a friendship quote. I often sprinkle these friendship quotes in our training sessions for volunteers, and I recently did one for volunteers who are embarking on a friendship with a senior who with mild to moderate dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And I often ask the volunteers to pick their favorite friendship quote, and this one almost always wins, especially in those sessions where they may be embarking on a friendship with someone with dementia. A friend is someone who knows the song in your heart and sings it back to you when you have forgotten how it goes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we just have 5 minutes for a few questions. But I first want to thank the 3 panelists for really filling the idea of across the lifespan and this concept of the whole conference, advancing social health as a public priority. You've shown us what's possible from young people through to workplaces, through to working directly with seniors. Thank you. I think these are going to be where we're going to sit. Okay, excellent. So one thought comes to me. Your Lunch and Learn, Sydney. You should have a Mentorship Matters Lunch and Learn and a community links. Yeah, just there's so many connections you could make. One of the things you've each demonstrated is the power of the methods you're showing to make a difference in people's lives, in young people's lives, in the workplace, and for seniors. And that power has been demonstrated, but it's not clear and I think maybe I'd ask each of you to say a little bit more about what are the biggest barriers to moving that work forward. So maybe we'll start with you, the barriers and what would make a difference. So is the barrier, here's an example, is it hard to recruit the mentors? Is it the training? Is it the funding? What are the barriers to getting the scale you want in, because the proofs seem to be there. We can start with you. Thanks, Sherry.
I think for us at Big Brothers Big Sisters, the biggest barrier post-pandemic has been that we've got a surge in children coming in, so children seeking mentors, and the volunteers who are signing up has dropped. So yeah, we're kind of on this struggle to recruit volunteers from across the city who will mentor the children on our wait list. That's the biggest barrier right now.
So Sherry, thank you. And what have you started to think about with respect to that barrier in terms of volunteer recruitment?
So we've just launched a new team called the Community Engagement Team. So they work across pockets in Toronto, and they're meeting with nonprofits in the area, community groups, influencers, and trying to, go on social and use social, and also focus on the benefits of volunteering as a mentor for themselves. Yeah.
Great. So it's not just about it, almost like what you've described with the young people, their benefit, what they're showing, or the students. So the benefit for the volunteers as much as for the young people who are experiencing ACEs. Thank you.
Just to add, because we talked about social prescribing this morning, we have a mentor whose therapist recommended he come and mentor. He signed up with Big Brothers, and so he came to us last year. He's now a mentor for over a year, and he shared his testimonial last month stating that he's in a very good place right now and so happy that he signed up. So all thanks to his therapist. Yeah.
Great synergy. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Sydney, can you speak about the barriers in the workplace? Is it leaders? Is it manager training? What are the barriers?
I think it's manager training, and also, like I mentioned, how we're in an interesting spot of remote, hybrid, on-site. That mess, me and Pete had a conversation about it not too long ago, and really understanding, okay, we have to have consistency and making sure everyone knows to be connected in the workplace. What are the tools and resources that the organization is actually implementing? And it goes back to, management training. Do they know how to deal with people that are of diverse backgrounds, and really knowing how to better manage? A lot of managers don't know how to manage, frankly, to be quite honest, and really understanding, okay, what role does a manager play in supporting human connection and building and fostering these environments that people feel like they can do the best work and bring themselves to work?
So some real message around leadership training, and I teach a course at U of T in nonprofit leadership. So one of the things I'm thinking of is how are leaders understanding their role in supporting connection. So it's like adding a dimension around connection. But I also think the practical examples that you're talking about in your lunch and learns will make a difference. People getting very practical.
And I think also with the lunch and learns or any session, so a lot of times I do sessions or even trainings, managers try to seem like they don't need that training and they don't need that instruction, but you're just being transparent enough to be like, I'm learning alongside my employees. I'm learning something new, and we're all learning. This is promoting a culture of learning and exploration.
Thank you. That's great. Well, you've got a mic. Okay. Yeah. So if you can speak to the barriers in your scaling.
Yeah. Really, there's a couple of interesting ones. One is cost. It's just money. And interestingly, we're working institution to institution at the moment. So working with seniors care provider organizations, and they don't have the money for social programs. They don't even have the nominal cost, because we're trying to build a platform that keeps this cost really, really low per pair. They don't have that. So some have a little bit, and they're able to support and they're able to share, and that's why we built a charity for this. So a little bit on that end. We have no shortage of volunteers, so happy to share. Maybe they're a little too young for some organizations, but being connected and having the strategy of recruiting on campus is extremely successful. These are motivated volunteers, a lot of them looking for healthcare careers, so they really want opportunities like this. An interesting barrier that we've learned is agreement on the side of the senior to do this. So our service care providers have no shortage of people they identify that, you know what, this person lives alone, this person calls me all the time, they tell me they're lonely, you know, but when they get approached, hey, do you want to make a friend with a young person, they say, no, I'm not lonely. So we have, we have instead turned that around and asked them to become mentors to our university students, and that's successful. And indeed, you know, we approach this as it's a friendship. This is not you know, we don't. Maybe in a conference we lead with social isolation, but in the other communication we lead with the friendship, which is beneficial to both. So that's an interesting barrier we faced that some of our clients are initially say no.
Do you think that resistance is about not wanting to express a need? I love your reframe because it's saying, what's the story? The story is friendship, and then the academic aspect is the social isolation descriptions. But
yes,
how people don't respond to that in the same way.
Yeah, I think some people are unwilling to admit that they might need help. Well, I'm not lonely, or in this case, right? So I think that's what we're seeing, and the service providers very, very quickly realize this, and we've kind of learned this now. And so the pitch, you know, the communication, the training of our partner organizations is towards, hey, come and be a mentor for our students, and that works quite well. And there's a lot of truth to that. So I'm not saying that.
It's why we're a human connection movement, not a loneliness campaign.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
What's the message we want to convey, and how people respond to that?
Yeah.
Given the time, Pete, do we have time for one question, one or two questions from?
I want to make a comment. So.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. This was amazing. And I just wanted to share my personal story. So I actually was one of the youth that Sherry was talking about. I had a high ACE score, and when I was 8 years old, I got paired with my big sister, and up until that point, it was really rough, and I was heading down a road where I can quite honestly say I would not be alive today had it not been for my big sister, who actually ended up becoming my adopted family. And they took me in, and that mentorship especially was interesting. They were in their 50s and 60s when they decided to come and mentor. So it was also this really great intergenerational relationship where I got to be mentored by older people who really had the wisdom and the time to support me and help me grow up. And so I just wanted to make that comment that I also wouldn't have been here today, like supporting a human connection movement and helping plan this conference, had it not been for mentorship and amazing organizations like this that are really trying to bridge the gaps and remove barriers so that our youth can grow up and thrive and really actualize on their potential and make a difference in this world. So I think that impact is just so powerful, and I love all the work you're doing. So if there's any way you all can support these organizations, they make a difference every day in the lives of people.
Thank you, Bobby. Wow. Okay, so we've got a few more minutes for a couple of comments. Yes, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. So I actually started off in high school volunteering as a big sister. First I did it in like the general program, and then I was like in Brampton. Then we did like a Black advisory program. And working with U of T this summer in like a summer mentorship program, they really emphasize making sure that our mentoring is sustainable. So I've tried things like giving my mentees a journal so they can use, or trying to keep in contact with them But like since I'm still quite young, I still have like schoolwork and have this and I have that in the way. But like mentoring was the gateway for me doing this research project right now. It started my passion for educational equity. I would say for someone like me who's still in university, do you guys have any tips for providing sustainable solutions for my mentees, so that when I'm not there all the time because I have this to do or that to do, like they're still able to apply it and still able to carry on my lessons in their everyday lives?
Wow, lots of little sisters and big sisters in here. But thank you. I know it is super difficult to show up every time, and this has been coming up a lot in our Mentors Corner that we have every other month. But what's important is, even if you can't, I don't know, you have tests and exams and other commitments, it's always to communicate to your mentee that you're not going to be there, rather than them expecting you to be there and then not showing up. So I think that would be a key to having a solid relationship with your mentee, is just being absolutely truthful about what's happening, and showing up whenever you can, genuinely being there completely.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could answer it along the lines of like when the program ends, because like at the end of school year you're done with your mentee. Like how can we continue on giving them sustainable solutions for after like we're not their mentor anymore?
So we do have like a lot of mentor-mentee matches who continue as a natural mentorship. So just like, whenever you can, go out to a park, or go for ice cream, or talk about a movie or something like that. And I would say, just dropping, even if it's a line or two in an email or a text, hey, how you doing? Even if you can't see each other, in person, that would be really, really useful. And you can keep in touch. We have matches who are still in touch, 10 and 20 years on after their actual match closed. So it's a relationship for life. Yeah.
I'd just like to add, I think your last piece of advice is great. Just form a friendship, right? And within a friendship, do what friends do. You have knowledge, and we try to foster this in our friendships that are happening, right? This bi-directional sort of communication, and it can continue on a regular basis, or it can continue on an irregular basis, but friendships continue, and you can become that, like we hope for our volunteers to become health advocates or health monitors, or health guiders to their seniors. You can do the same thing with your mentee through an informal continued connection.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Any other questions for our panel today before we wrap up? Anyone else? Thank you for sharing your experiences. And any panelists have a final word about what you've been sharing you want to add? Final word. Go ahead, Sydney.
I think what I talked about at the end of my presentation, just talking about the, communicating with your mentor, a mentee that you can't meet this week, or, explaining, just communicating and breaking down those barriers and letting people have more insight, and really communicating how they best need you to communicate is my major takeaway.
Thank you, Sydney. And I think we learned just before this session about showing up. And so I think there's a piece of that, just showing up as a mentor in the long-term relationship, friendship. There could be things in the life of the mentee that emerge over time, and that you'd be one of the people that would be meaningful for that person for you to just show up for in some way. So just using that as a way to remind ourselves that we can be part of a wide network, and that as those seniors and young people grow, and folks in the workplace, that network matters. Thanks, everyone.